starting off with sanding the edges of the PCB to ensure that they fit properly in the shell. From there, we're going to start with adding solder to all of the points on the PCB. From there, we're going to cut 2 pieces of wire about 1.5 inches long. It doesn't really matter the color, as long as you can keep track of them. Add solder to the tips of each wire to ensure that they have a strong connection to the PCB. You can use flux if necessary. When soldering the wires to the PCB, ensure that they're facing the direction of the port. From there, go and grab the bottom shell of the assembly. If there's any internal stringing, feel free to use a torch or a lighter to clear that out, but be very careful not to melt it. Next thing we're going to work on is the toggle switch. First thing that needs to be done is the contact needs to be bent. Make sure to bend the furthest outside positive contact. From there, we will add solder onto all 3 of the contacts to make it easier later on to add wires. Strip the ends of the wires that came off the USB breakout board. Starting with connecting the positive contact to the bent contact on the switch, we will then go connect the negative to the gold contact on the switch. From there, we start with mounting in our board and then our switch. Push the PCB through the switch hole and align the port with the hole in the frame, pushing it in until it seats fully. If it seats fully, add a drop of superglue in each of the screw holes to ensure it stays there. Next comes putting the switch in. Make sure you align the notch with the bottom of the frame. It should seat nearly fully, but there will be a small edge. From there, we're going to get about 6 inches of 18 gauge red and black wire, cut and stripped on both ends. From there, make sure to add solder on both the positive and negative side of the wires. The next part is to feed the 18 gauge wire through the slots along the side of the shell. After that, we're going to work on soldering the positive and negative to the negative on the switch and the unused positive terminal on the switch. If you're having trouble getting it to all fit, you can bend the wires using a pair of pliers. Now, to do the first test, we're going to plug in the USB and see if the LED on the toggle switch turns on. Next thing we're going to do is to slide the voltage boosters into the shell to ensure that they'll fit further down the line. Once you're done that, you can remove them from the shell, as we have some soldering to do on them. Once we're done with the soldering, we can put them back into the shell, as this will be their final position for assembly. Making sure to have the adjustment screw facing upwards. Next thing, we're going to strip the two 18 gauge wires we have, so that we can solder them on to the first of the two voltage boosters. We're going to start with soldering the ground wire on top to the voltage booster board. Using 3 inches of wire from one of the fans, strip the ends and apply solder. We're going to use this extra bit of wire to connect the two voltage boosters in parallel. Make sure to add the adhesive-backed heat sinks to the coils on the voltage boosters. Now we're going to start working with the fans. The first thing to do is clip off the connector. The way that I suggest to get the cable through is to actually solder together the two cables and solder to a single, using the single cable to fish it through and then pull the two cables through. Make sure to avoid any twisting in the fan cables, as it will cause the fan to not seat properly. From now, we will fish the fan cable through the side ports. There are holes designated along the side of the shell. Now, we're going to start using a little bit of the black putty to seal around from where the wire came, so that no air can escape there. Next thing we're going to do is to strip the wires and solder them onto the first voltage booster. Repeat the same process with this fan cable as you were supposed to with the first one. cut the fan cable to approximately where it would connect to the output of the second voltage booster. Then solder the two cables out of the fan into the output of the voltage booster. The last thing that needs to be done on the electrical side is to connect the parallel of the power wires to the second voltage booster. So cut them to size and solder to the input. You may want to remove the heatsink while attaching the wires. So you're going to use about 6 inches of the dum-dum putty for each of the fans, cutting the foot you have in half. Using about an inch from each side, you're going to roll it into a thin line. Creating a seal around the fan to CPAP tubing connectors with the dum-dum putty line we've just created. Pulling up each of the sides of the fan to actually fit the connector inside the front of the fan. Repeat the same thing for the other side. Using the short screws on the right side of the adapter and the long screws on the left side, make sure to tighten it in until the adapter hits the base. Repeat the same thing for the other side. Using the same thin, long strand of the dum-dum from before, we're going to actually push it around the outside edge of the fan to seal it in. Use the dum-dum you need. You have enough in the kit to actually go all the way around both fans, making sure to push it into the edges to make sure there's a good seal. From there, get the top plate. Make sure you use the right side for this one, and then get the required long screws for it. Make sure to not over-torque the screws, as the main shell is plastic. With each extra screw, the seal will become more and more compressed, leading to a better seal around the edges. Repeat the identical process for the other plate. Next comes tuning the voltage boosters. Plug it in to the power supply you'll be using to power it daily. From there, you're going to check to make sure that both of the fans work. To tune the voltage boosters, simply plug it in and turn them counterclockwise till you start to hear the power of the fans increase. Keep turning them both counterclockwise until your power supply will not supply any more power or it throws an error. You might have to ramp down one of the fans and have one fan pumping more air than the other. But this is all dependent on how much the USB battery bank you're using can supply. Once this is all done, you get to the best part, to put on the top shell. Putting in these screws, you should be very careful to not over-tighten it, otherwise you will snap and break the shell. Here I'm being very careful. All the screws on the bottom are long, and all of the ones on the side of the shell are short.